today will be focusing on trigonometric ratios, or trig ratios for shortening. So the thing that you need to know or remember is sine, tangent, cosine, and just these three. So sine, cosine, and tangent. So sine theta is equal to opposite over hypotenuse. Cos theta is equal to adjacent over hypotenuse. And tan theta, so just let me put in the theta, is equal to opposite over adjacent. Now, once you're trying to figure out these, you must be able to identify it on a triangle. So here you have two different triangles labeled for you. So hypotenuse, I think for you to remember, it is always the longest side. It is always the slanted or the diagonal side for a right angle triangle. So once it's a right angle triangle, it's the side that is not touching the right angle, or it did not help to form the right angle. So that's what a hypotenuse is. Now the opposite and the adjacent sides. If you realize here, adjacent is at the bottom, and here adjacent is at the side. Here opposite at the bottom, here opposite is at the side. That's because the opposite and adjacent sides are in relation to their angles. Now opposite is always the one that is across from the angle. So if you realize, here's the angle, and the opposite is across. The angle is here, so the opposite is across. Adjacent now, that is the side that is touching the angle, not the hypotenuse. So the hypotenuse is always going to be touching the angle, but the adjacent is the next side that is touching the angle. So adjacent, here's the angle, and it's touching it, so that's the adjacent. Touching the angle here, and this is the adjacent. So now, once you can remember the hypotenuse and any other, you will automatically know that the remaining third side is the next one that you couldn't possibly remember. Now, these ratios, for you to get a better understanding, here are two examples to put them into practice. Now, when you're trying to solve a triangle to find a missing side and you're using trig ratios, first thing you need to do, look at the ratio or look at the triangle and see what do you get. So now you have your angle, so you know you're not trying to find an angle. So now the next side that you know here, because it's touching the angle, you know that's the adjacent. So you're already looking at which ratios involves adjacent. So it's either cosine or tangent. Now, what are you trying to find? This is the longest side, so it's the hypotenuse. So look back at your ratios. You have the adjacent and you want your hypotenuse. So that includes cosine. So you'll just simply use your cosine rule. Now to shorten these, sine, they normally drop off the e, so you would have sin theta. For cos, you drop off the ein part here and just have cos theta. For tangent, you just drop off the gent and leave with the tan. So cosine. So we'll say cos 30, because it's cos the angle. So cos 30, because that's our angle, equal to, here, adjacent divided by hypotenuse. So the adjacent is 10 centimeters, and that's divided by x. Now when you set it out like this, you'll just be applying the steps for solving equations. And if you don't know how to do that, there's another video that you can check out for solving equations. So now you'll just simply cross multiply. So x times that, so that's x multiplied by cos 30 equals 10 centimeters. Now because you want to get the x by itself, you just have to divide both sides. So it's now 10 centimeters divided by cos 30. So x is equal to, now x equal 10 divided by cos 30. So one of two things you can do. You can either work out individually what is cos 30 and then you write 10 divided by that number, or here you can simply just type it in on your calculator. Say 10 divided by, and then you simply type in cos, and then you put in your angle 30, and that should give you 11.55 centimeter when it's rounded off. Now, for you to find cos, generally you will see the big word cos on your calculator if you are using Casio or some of the other high-branded calculators. Now for this one, and please note before I even go over there, the same procedure will be applied if you're trying to find sine or tan. So it doesn't really matter what angle ratio you're using, the procedures are generally the same depending on what you're trying to find. Now, find theta. So now you're trying to find an angle. So the angle is slightly different from when you want to find a side. So this was finding a side, now we are finding an angle. Now the fact that you have the angle, here you recognize that you don't have a value for the hypotenuse. So you'll just look over on this side. What does not include the hypotenuse? And that's tangent. So you'll just write tan. The angle is that equals. So tangent says the opposite must be divided by the adjacent. So the opposite to the angle is 5 meters divided by the adjacent to it, which is 4 meters. So now tan theta is equal to 5 divided by 4 gives you 1.25 meters, or 1.25, because meters would cancel meters basically. Now here, when you get here, you'll just simply write back here angle representative, which is theta, which is equal to tan inverse of 1.25. Now you must be wondering, where does the tan inverse come from? So once the tan, sine or cos, you are trying to find an angle. Once you are trying to find an angle and you get to this step where you have the tan, sine or cosine of the angle is equal to a single number, once you are trying to find what the value of the angle is, you'll always write the angle is equal to the inverse of either sine, cosine, or tangent. And when you get to this part, you'll just simply type it in on your calculator. Now for you to type that in on your calculator, if it's a Casio brand like the one that I am using, you'll just simply press shift. So you'll just press shift and then you'll search for what you want. So if you want sine, you'll search for sine. If you need cosine, you'll search for cosine. And if you need tangent, you'll search for tangent. So because we're dealing with tangent, so I'll press sine and tan, and I'll get the tan inverse. And then you'll just simply type in the value, so that's 1.25, and that will give you theta is equal to 51.34 degrees. So you always put degrees for your angles. And that's it. So as long as you are able to remember the different formulas and try to apply them correctly, you'll be able to do it. And just for you to remember, if you have never heard it before, when you try to remember sine, you'll say so. So sine equal opposite over hypotenuse. Cosine equal adjacent over hypotenuse. Tau. So tau, tangent equals opposite over adjacent. So you can remember that soccer tau. And that will possibly help you to remember what the different trig ratios are. So thanks for watching, and tune in again with Mr. Rowan while I explain other mathematical concepts.